Rules before we begin. By default setting of a Zoom webinar, all participants' mics are muted. If you have any questions, kindly use the Q&A feature. Our event moderator will direct questions raised to speakers during the Q&A segment. If you need any logistics assistance, please click on the hand raise icon and our secretariats will attend to you. A quick run-through on the agenda. FLA President Mr. Dickson Low will open with a welcome address, followed by a quick introduction of FLA by myself, Tricia, Executive Director. Mr. Albert Kong, CEO of Asia-wide Franchise Consultants, will share on trends and opportunities in Singapore. Mr. Andy Lake, Principal of Baker McKenzie, will share on legal policies relating to franchising and licensing in Singapore. Thereafter, we'll dive into the panel discussion where Mr. Dickson Low, representing the F&B industry, and Ms. Andrea Brell, representing the fitness and lifestyle industry, will share their experiences. We will address questions at the end of the panel segment, and I'll end off with the business matching opportunities in Singapore. Without further ado, may I invite Mr. Dickson Low, President of FLA, to share a few words. Mr. Dickson, please. Dickson, your mic is muted.
Hi, good morning. I'm so sorry. My mic is muted. Good morning, everyone. Let me share a bit about FLA. Franchise and Licensing Association, in short FLA, is one of the founding members of the World Franchise Council. It was established in 1993 with the mission to nurture and develop Singapore franchise and licensing industry. Through partnership with Singapore Government Agency, grassroots organization and international franchise and licensing bodies, FLA assists brands in their international development programs. You can refer all the range of activities from diagnostic to training, awards and trade show in our FLA website. FLA has been an active growing membership of 150 companies in Singapore, representing more than 250 strong brands. All right. About the Asia Pacific Franchise Confederation's education webinar. Members country take turns sharing information to enrich companies that are keen to enter the country. The webinar aims to provide information to foreign brands that are keen to enter Singapore market. All right, we hope that this webinar will give some insights about the Singapore market. So without further ado, let's move into the main segment. And Albert, over to you.
Thank you, President Dickson. Right. Okay. I will move quite quickly due to the time constraint. First slide, please, Tricia. Right. So today, basically, I'm just going to let you know a little bit about the history of franchising in Singapore. And then, of course, you know, what's happening and what are the possible trends and opportunities. Next slide. Next, okay, yeah. So this one basically is to say that, yeah, you know, in Singapore, many of you know that if you want to get a grant from the Singapore government, which is very business friendly, the consultant you use must be qualified. Okay, so this is just for information. Next. Right, so this again basically tells you that, yeah, Singapore, we are very blessed. We are, you know, our GDP is pretty high. And you know, our infrastructure is renowned throughout the world. So it's a good business hub for businesses to put their regional headquarters here. Next. Now, a bit of, well, there's no official data, and hopefully, you know, in the coming future, we will, you know, be able to have a registrar and maybe even be able to get official data from franchising players in Singapore. but I estimated that franchising contributes about 6% of Singapore's overall GDP. Okay, next. There are no specific franchise laws in Singapore. Now, I'm not going to steal the limelight from my good friend Andy Lake from Baker and McKenzie, so he will elaborate more. But basically, Singapore is like some nations like New Zealand and what have you. We do not have franchise-specific laws, unlike Malaysia or Vietnam, or even now, Indonesia and Philippines are considering some sort of, rules and regulations. Next. Okay, next. A bit of history. So basically, in the early years, major companies like Shell, Esso, Singer, and Bata, they started operating under licensing systems in Singapore. Then in the early 80s, some Singapore-based companies began to acquire international brands like McDonald's. I still remember Bob Kwan, the franchisee of McDonald's. I know him because he recruited of my army friends from the Armour Regiment. Yeah, and their first outlet was, at Orchard Road. So very interestingly, then later some local companies like Ecom Minimart and Happy Family launched their franchise systems. So those were the early 80s. Next. And then over the years, like I said earlier, the Singapore government is very business friendly. So they had this agency called PSB, which later, changed its name to Spring, and now it is part of ESG. And the Trade Development Board, okay, so both have undergone 2 name changes. They have been supporting franchising since, the early 80s. I still remember Minister Lim Boon Heng announcing that the Singapore government will support franchising. Okay, next. And then those grants from the government were named, people new to the association may not know these terms, Frandas, Latest. Now the latest so-called scheme's name is called EDG, which is Enterprise Development Grant. Okay, and in the early years, our show was actually called Global Franchising, and our so-called vendor manager was Singapore Exhibition Services, part of the Montgomery Group, because now it's called FL Asia, right? Next. And early adopters will be names like Prima Deli, Bee Cheng Hiang, Informatics, Popular, Nanyang, and what have you. Okay, and some of them are no more in franchising, more because of restructuring, or that the next generation has taken over and they are on a different path, or they have gone public listed. Next. I just want to quote our very famous, and all of us love him, our founding Prime Minister of Singapore, when he said this in Kuala Lumpur on the 16th of August. He said that on the assumption that there are no major upheavals, there will be an East Asian economic transformation accompanied by an efflorescence of Asian popular cultures, I think the gist of this is that the Asian culture will come up, Asian brands, be it food, be it, education, be it fashion, will become popular. And this is the case, whether it's Korean or Indian or Vietnamese or Singapore brands. Next. Now, just very quickly, why, open in Singapore? Why base your regional headquarters in Singapore? Why exhibit in the Singapore Franchise and Licensing Asia show? One, strategic location. I think every scholar in the world will agree that we are very blessed with a deep harbor port, very strategic location where all the major shipping, companies will use their this thing and pass through the Malaysian Strait through Singapore. We are very, very stable, and like I said earlier, our government is not just friendly by talking, but they actually show by all the grants and all the facilitation, right? Our infrastructure, all of you know Changi Airport and our seaport and what have you. Yeah, our workforce, thanks to the emphasis on education, and then low taxes and incentives, strong intellectual property protection. As I say, I'm sure you read yesterday's news that the International Trademark Association is going to hold their annual meeting in Singapore this month, so another indication about how Singapore is perceived, to really put a lot of emphasis on IP. The ease of doing business, we are consistently ranked as one of the easiest places in the world, to operate a business, and then diverse and vibrant business ecosystem. Next. So these are just some slides to say that, on IP, we even have our tertiary, institutions offering all sorts of courses and, on intellectual property. Next. Another one. Next. So, and then you can even get complimentary sessions concerning, intellectual property and intangible assets. Right. Next. So from even FLA's estimates, we estimated there are 900 franchise brands in Singapore in 2023. Okay, of course, compared to, let's say, Australia and New Zealand, we are not that high franchise brands per capita, but I think we are getting there because franchising is so popular, and we hope that there will be more and more good and strong franchise brands here. Next. These are things that Tricia can share in detail, but clearly F&B is still the largest sector, and no surprise, education will get stronger because people respect the kind of curricula and the kind of emphasis we put on education. So education franchises are very popular. Next. Again, these are numbers you can get from FLA, but again, you can see that we are getting there. Most of our franchises have less than 5 outlets, okay, because Singapore is small. Whereas if you look at China, having 1,000 is common nowadays, because of the huge domestic market. Next. Okay, just a quick, selling here. Our show is on the 17th to the 19th at the beautiful, iconic Marina Bay Sands. Please do register and please do join us. Next. And FFA is very active, and I will not steal the limelight from Tricia. Next. Again, just quickly on the supporting organizations, the two most active ones are Enterprise Singapore and IPOS, Intellectual Property Office of Singapore. Next. Top challenges, I think if you talk to any franchisor, whether from America or from China, they'll tell you that our biggest challenge in Singapore is labor shortage, high rentals, and the market is small, which is why we facilitate not just Singapore companies, but even Singapore-based companies to go international using Singapore as a springboard. Okay, of course, then, because of these challenges, a lot of franchisors start to use robots, start to use IT, they operate smaller outlets, and they re-strategize on how to overcome these challenges. Next. So some examples, robots in a restaurant. Next. A robot that deliver, the food to your table. Next. Downsize outlets like Pepper Lunch, Fish and Co. Next. And then also people start to use ghost kitchens to try out or to open more outlets, but not, with brick and mortar. That will keep their costs down. Next. And then rethinking, for example, my client Old Chang Kee, they also evolve into curry times, which can be a proper restaurant, and then Ya Kun, which sells, coffee and bread. They also take on bread papa, and then, they can actually optimize the size of their outlets. And then another client, which is buying artisan, other than waiting for people to come and buy their leather products, they also do workshops. So these are re-strategizing to so-called, optimize your resources so that your costs are kept down. Next. Okay, so opportunities. As I said, the labor and a small domestic market, I think clearly everybody knows that there's this big emphasis on ESG, on sustainability. So if you are able to make your franchise sort of aligned with this worldwide attention on ESG, I think there's always a potential. And then, Singapore is aging. You know, so if your food are able to, you know, cater, or even your gym is able to cater to the aging population, you know, why not, right? I mean, somebody asked, you know, hey, Albert, is there another bubble tea or donut franchise coming? I say, yes, always there is. Because the millennials, you know, even someone like me at 67, we like to have more choices. We like, when we hear that there's this new brand, you know, coming out of New York or from Beijing, we say, hey, is it coming to Singapore? I like to try it, right? So opportunities are always there. I urge everybody to just put on your thinking cap and see where are the needs, where are the gaps, you know, and how you can address those needs and gaps, yeah, and do your homework, right? Next. So just some examples, an egg slut, you know, it's just egg sandwich, but there was a long queue, you know, and then another two coffees are coming to Singapore, and they have already landed. Luckin has already opened 2 outlets. Tim Hortons with the RBI, you know, with the Burger King and what have you, they are all, you know, having great plans here. Next. Another one is Coach. Who will imagine that Coach will, you know, have a cafe and then, you know, arrange their showroom in such a beautiful manner, right? So Singapore is always a very popular place, you know, for new concepts or for concepts to sort of tell the world that they are evolving and that they are, you know, they're still very hip, you know, and that they even go into F&B to let you relax while looking at the merchandise. Next. Of course, it's good to just share with you some failures. Like Wendy's, unfortunately, because of their lack of maybe economies of scale and some other challenges, did not do well in Singapore. Taco Bell, under even the Yums group also. I think if they revamp, if they relook at their menu and they find a good partner, they may have a chance. Okay, next. Okay, and then just a quick one. A lot of our franchisors like to go to Indonesia. I think it's quite wise because they can test out their concept and system in a neighboring country and not go far away, and then very hard to adjust and, you know, and also monitor their franchisee. Next. Okay, so this is my last slide. Whatever you do, whichever country, even in Singapore, remember the pastel factors: political, environment, social, technical, legal, right? And also environmental, right? So these things, remember, it will be useful for you when you move on. Thank you very much. I will now sort of pass over to Tricia to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Albert, for the comprehensive overview of doing business in Singapore market. Next, we have Andy, a seasoned lawyer with 30 years of experience in IP, corporate litigation, and arbitration matters covering all aspects of commercial and advisory work, anti-piracy, civil and criminal enforcement, portfolio management, and IP disputes across many industries. May I now invite Mr. Andy Lake, Principal at Baker McKenzie, to share on franchise and license regulations in Singapore, brand protection, and best practices. Andy, please.
Thanks so much, Tricia, and good morning to everyone. A real privilege today just to share on the topic as featured on this slide. As Tricia mentioned, I'm a partner of Baker McKenzie Singapore. I'm also the managing partner of Baker McKenzie's Yangon office in Myanmar. As some of you may know, Baker McKenzie is an international law firm with 77 offices in 46 countries. We are in 7 of the 10 ASEAN countries, and we are a full service firm. So that includes areas such as tax, mergers and acquisition, employment, and of course, IP and technology. So without further ado, let me begin. Next slide, please. So this will be our agenda for today. I'm going to set the context by providing a brief overview of the franchising legal environment in Singapore, and then speak about IP protection and offer some practical recommendations for businesses looking to either franchise or license their brands locally. Next slide, please. So first up, the franchising legal regime in Singapore. So just to briefly set the context, a key appeal of Singapore as a market for franchisors and franchisees alike is, as Albert mentioned earlier, the business-friendly environment we have. Unlike other countries around the world, Singapore does not have a franchise disclosure obligation or registration requirements. As an example, Indonesia has tight franchising laws which require registration of foreign franchises, while the US has a very comprehensive franchise disclosure requirement. And the barriers to entry for prospective franchisors or franchisees in Singapore are therefore very low. But this in turn may pose a risk for franchisees. Due to the lack of franchise disclosure obligations, franchisees often will have to conduct their own due diligence to ensure that they know what they are getting into and who they are contracting with. So practically speaking, most franchisors will disclose relevant information to prospective franchisees. So this is not a significant issue, but the main takeaway of this slide is that there are no strict regulations concerning franchising in Singapore. Next slide, please. Now we will speak a little about the risk from an IP perspective and how you can protect your IP assets. So first up, what is IP or intellectual property? The conventional IP that most of you would be very acquainted with would be your trademarks, your patents, which are your inventions, and copyright, which could be literary or artistic works and so on. But of course, there are other forms of IP rights, such as your registered designs, your plant variety rights, and so on, that a company may deal with. And at the very least, most companies, if not all, will have trademarks, which really is a key indicia of your brand. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm only going to focus on largely trademarks. And trademarks, as most of you know, are a registrable IP right, which means that to obtain protection under the Singapore IP law, you need to apply for registration of your logo or your brand name. As a brief aside, note that all IP rights are, not all IP rights are registrable in Singapore. And the most important non-registrable IP right in a franchise business will be your trade secrets or confidential information. This can include, for instance, the secret recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken's fried chicken, or the names and contact particulars of a franchisor's customers. There are some IP, copyright, for example, which subsists at the point of creation of an original work. And for copyright, no registration is required, but there may be nuances in some countries. So, for example, still on copyright, the US has a registration system. So something for you to bear in mind. Next slide, please. So how do you protect your brand? A key first step, as I mentioned earlier, would be to apply for registration of your trademarks. But just because you have registered your trademarks in your home country, that does not mean that it is automatically protected in some other country. So remember, IP rights are what lawyers call territorial in nature. So it is crucial for you to register all of your marks that you intend to use in Singapore as well, if you have registered your marks in the home country. And you have to do so in the correct classes of goods and services, because that determines the scope that your mark will enjoy protection. So I will share a couple of negative case studies in the next part of my presentation. Now, to file a trademark application in Singapore, it's relatively straightforward, and all you have to do is to submit a form with the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, and you set out either a clear graphical representation of the mark, or if it is a word mark, in typeface font, and you list the goods or services that you are seeking protection for and pay the prescribed fees, which in Singapore is only about between 280 to 380 Singapore dollars per month per class. And for a straightforward application which does not face any objections from the registry or other brand owners, the total processing time from filing date to registration of the mark is about 6 to 12 months. So that is fast comparative to some of the other countries in the Southeast Asian region. Just to highlight that upon registration of your mark, you have to use it in the course of your business within the first 5 years. If you don't do that, some third party may apply to have your mark revoked for the grounds of what we call non-use. Now, lastly, note that Singapore is a party to the Madrid Protocol. Some of you may have heard of this. This is an international protocol that allows applicants to seek registration of trademarks in multiple jurisdictions through the World Intellectual Property Office, as opposed to making individual national applications in each country that you're interested in. This is helpful if you already have a basic mark registered in your home country. You can simply designate, for instance, Singapore as a designation country, and the standard examination and publication process will then kick in. If there's no objection within 18 months, your mark will be deemed registered in Singapore. If you are a business with an international portfolio of trademarks, registering for a mark in Singapore via the Madrid Protocol can be more efficient, cost efficient, time efficient in the long run. Next slide, please. Now here I will share a couple of practical tips for brand protection when you're entering into any franchising or licensing arrangement. Next slide, please. So how can the franchisors or licensors ensure that their IP rights are adequately protected? A key first step, of course, is for you to conduct what we call an IP audit. So this allows you to identify all the IP assets that your company has and see if there are any gaps in protection. And before you file to apply to register your trademarks in Singapore, it pays to conduct what we call a pre-filing availability search. This is to identify if there are any registered marks that are similar to the trademarks that you are seeking to register. So this helps to avoid any potential opposition or infringement actions against you down the line. It may be the case that you would then have to tweak the design of your trademark before registration in order to avoid any infringement risk. So that is the benefit of having a pre-filing availability search. Now, if all is clear following on from the search, you can then proceed to register your trademarks in the appropriate classes. Now, just offering you a case study here. In Thailand, there's a company called Jumping Clay Corporation. Some of you may have heard of it. They sell toy molding clay products, right? And they had registered trademarks in many countries, but unfortunately not in Thailand, where they had entered into a franchise agreement with a local company called Hands-On. And during the term of the agreement, the franchisee then went behind Jumping Clay's back to file and register Jumping Clay's trademark. And the franchisee's application for the mark was subsequently registered, and the franchisee even sought to terminate the franchise agreement to pursue its own business by exploiting the newly registered trademarks. And even though the franchisee was eventually injuncted, right? So there was a court order restraining the franchisee from using this newly registered trademarks. This case study presents a cautionary tale to all would-be franchisors. If engaging in a plain vanilla trademark licensing arrangement, it would also be helpful to record the license with the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore. So this procedure is what we call a trademark recordal. Please note that the recordal is not a strict legal requirement. In other words, the rights are validly transferred and licensed as long as the parties have signed a license agreement. But the recordal is important to put third parties, so not the licensor and the licensee, but to put third parties acquiring a conflicting right in the mark on notice. So for instance, if the licensor secretly seeks to assign the trademark to a third party without informing this third party of existing licensee's right to use the trademark, the recordal serves to impute knowledge to the world at large, right? So this recordal of a trademark, you can see, can be very applicable and helpful for licensees or franchisees to protect their rights under the license or franchise agreement. And lastly, have in place an effective monitoring and enforcement regime so that any infringing users of your marks can be detected, and this will help to avoid any dilution of your brand identity by, for example, low quality counterfeits or by infringers. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. I'll be brief. It's critical to take a very close look at your franchise or license agreement. You do want to have in place a very strong contractual safeguards to protect your rights under the agreement. And when granting an IP license, be very clear what the scope of the license is. For example, is the license exclusive or non-exclusive? Second, is it revocable? Third, is there a royalty fee involved? Fourth, how long will the license last? Fifth, what IP assets precisely are being licensed? Six, are there any restrictions on use? So this is just a non-exhaustive list to offer everyone here a flavor of the kind of issues to look out for when you are drafting your license or your franchise agreement. And one of the key issues that we have seen arise relates to IP ownerships for assets that are created during the term of the franchise or license agreement. For example, if new copyright materials are created using artwork that has been licensed to the franchisee during the term of the agreement, will all of the IP rights in such new works automatically vest in the franchisor or the franchisee, right? Frequently what we call the foreground and the background IP. And the last thing you want is for your franchise or license agreement to remain silent on these kind of issues. That is why it is very crucial to have your lawyers cast a close eye over such contracts to ensure that they're properly structured and adequately address all risk areas and challenges. Now, lastly, we often see a transfer of proprietary information, such as your trade secrets I mentioned earlier. And this is frequent in any part of a licensing or franchising arrangement. As I mentioned earlier, this includes your recipes or formulas, your business plans, your customers list. So it's crucial to have a clear definition of what confidential information covers in your agreements, and then to insert obligations requiring your franchisee or licensee to take reasonable steps to protect confidential information. Frequently, you'll see these agreements where they'll just say, obligations to safeguard confidential information without precisely spelling out what the confidential information is. The court is not going to help you enforce if you do not define it. Next slide, please. So I've come to the end of my presentation. In the interest of time, I'm going to hand it back to Tricia. Thanks, Tricia.
Thank you, Mr. Andy, for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights with everyone. We will now move on to the panel segment. In addition to our earlier speakers, Andy and Albert, who will also be on this panel, I would like to introduce Mr. Dixon, President of FLA, Director of Ice Cream Brands. Dixon has over 30 years of experience in the F&B management in Singapore and Malaysia. He is known for creating successful restaurant brands like the Manhattan Fish Market, Popeyes, Tony Roma's, and more. Andrea's an experienced fitness, franchising, and business executive, a sought-after board member. Andrea is a chair of the Global Health and Fitness Alliance, an executive committee member of the Franchising and Licensing Association of Singapore, and a founding member of the Singapore Fitness Alliance. Andrea started with Anytime Fitness as a franchisee in Singapore nearly 10 years ago, when she opened 3 clubs and became the sub-master franchisee for Anytime Fitness Singapore. Andrea built the brand to nearly 70 clubs in Singapore within 3 years. Andrea is now a co-founder and a board director of Inspire Brands Asia. Inspire Brands Asia is the consortium that owns the master franchisee rights for Anytime Fitness across 9 countries in Asia. Inspire Brand Asia has over 300 Anytime Fitness clubs open and operating across Asia. Mr. Albert will be moderating this segment, and over to you, Albert.
Suggested by Tricia, we'll let the lady go first. The very fit and beautiful and successful Andrea. Can we get you going on, why Singapore, the benefit and potential in Singapore, and best practices and lessons learned? Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. I really appreciate being able to share my experience, and hopefully that will help all the participants in moving into Singapore, doing your business. So for us, we started, Anytime Fitness started in Singapore late 2013. And the master franchisor or franchisee at that point knew that Singapore was a stable enough country, strong, favorable business environment, well structured, to be able to choose Singapore as the base to begin expanding. So the plans were always to be expanding across Asia, but we wanted to make sure that we started in a strong market and build the brand up, build that brand awareness, which we weren't recognized or known in Asia. And so that's where they started in 2013 in Singapore. I came in as a franchisee myself in January 2014. So I was one of the first, I think there was 5 of us that started in Singapore. And people thought we were a bit crazy at that point, opening up a 24-hour fitness gym. It hadn't been done before in Asia, but obviously, we were confident in the brand. It was a very strong brand in other countries. And we knew that Singapore would be very similar environment, business environment, compared to other developing or developed countries. And so we did start relatively strong. We built up within the first 2 years, there was 24 clubs. And that's when I started taking over as the sub-master franchisee. And then I built Singapore out to 70 clubs in the next 3 years. So our experience has been amazing. From myself and my experience coming in, I wasn't in franchising before. I had not visited Singapore, but I just knew that through research and through connecting with the likes of Franchise Licensing Asia, and ESG as well, Enterprise Singapore, that it was a strong enough market for me to take that risk, and it paid off. So the things that were important for me was employment laws. Coming from Australia, our employment laws are very strong. So making sure that the employment laws were there, very highly educated, skilled workforce, English speaking, of course, that always helped for us moving into Asia. And then there was some tax benefits, tax incentives. The ease of starting up a business in Singapore is actually really incredible. So from a foreign perspective, moving into Singapore, starting a business, you can set up a company within a couple of days through a corporate secretary, being that I'm not Singaporean. And the cost is really quite minimal. So the tax incentives alone were of great benefit. I could go on, but I'm sure the others have some other information and we can go backwards and forwards. So I'll leave it there for now.
Back to you on lessons learned and your insight. Next, we go back to our president, Dixon. You have 5 slides, I believe. All right, over to you, Dixon.
Hi, yeah. Let me introduce a bit about ice cream brands that our company has. Ice cream brands is the company that owns the brand Gelare, which is from Australia. Next. All right, the brand itself has actually comes into Singapore in the year of 1998. And as so far, we have 7 outlets. We are the master franchisee, and we do have quite a couple of sub-franchisee in Singapore. Next. All right, well, these are the visions and what we are doing. We're selling the product. Next. Right, one of these are unique selling point, and one of our key USP in terms of our ice cream is that it is actually contained of 0% of air volume. Means to say that the product, the ice cream itself, is much creamier compared to a lot more other ice creams that contain air in it. So therefore, it's a lot more heavier at the same time. The mouthful that you get is a lot more quality products that you have. Right. Next. Well, these are what we have within our customers. Next. Now, ice cream brand being Gelare itself is part of the subsidiary of a bigger holding company known as Ing Food. And in Ing Food, we do have other brands in Singapore, both in Singapore and Malaysia. All right. Yep. All right. Thank you. Albert, you do have a questions for me?
Since both you and Andrea have already sort of shared, I think maybe it will be good for to pick your brains. For example, in spite of the saturation of coffee brands, this especially addressed to you, Dixon. Why are the likes of Luckin, Tim Hortons, and several others still wanting to come to Singapore, in spite of the challenges of high rentals and difficult to get employees? Maybe you share your insight. Thank you.
I think again here, Singapore is a city-state. Probably if you talk about China, you have Shanghai, you have Manila, you have Kuala Lumpur, all these city area, but it's not within the country itself. But Singapore itself is a city-state. This is what we have. And it is a small little country. It is compact. It is cosmopolitan. And this is why it is always a great launch pad for a lot of brands. And any brands who are successful would wanted to come into a place where they can showcase themselves to the international market. And we do have that part of it to access to the international market. I think Singapore, one of the things about trying and thriving in the Singapore market, again, here is the systems that we had. It is being said many times by our panelists right here. It's low taxation. It is a great financial center. And then I will say that as so far, politically, we are always very stable. And we are having a very friendly environment internationally. Of course, English speaking is the main thing about communicating in the Singapore business environment. So as such, all these factors contributed to a good assessment to put Singapore as a place where you could actually access a lot of international franchise connection. So again here, whatsoever successful brands being Luckin or or any other coffee. Even in Malaysia, we hear of brands like Juice Coffee, all that. Everyone has the plan to move to Southeast Asia, and definitely Singapore will be taken as a launching pad. We are always patronized and by international tourism, and a lot of people comes here. They sees the brand, they would love to have a try, and that's one of the biggest advantage right here. As much as we said that the cost, all that is pretty high, but I'm sure a lot of people have confidence of their brands, and this is why they have decided to come here. And any new brands and new company that comes here, our business environment are pretty friendly to them. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dixon. Yeah, which is why, I mean, if you talk to Subway, having their regional headquarters here, or the likes of Pepper Lunch from Japan, or RBI with, you know, with Burger King and Tim Hortons and what have you, I think they all are smart businessmen. So in spite of the challenges of a small domestic market and high rentals and limited supply of labor, but they can see that the other advantages, you know, of the, you know, the tax and of even tapping on other resources, like even getting tertiary institutions to help them do R&D, and all these things add up to make Singapore more than, you know, good to be based here. Yeah, maybe I go back to Andrea very quickly, although our time is quite limited. Andrea, you know, there are, in my 35 years in franchising, I have seen even Spanish brands in fitness coming to Singapore and, you know, actually focusing on women, but they failed. What would your take be on this? Why is, you know, your brand doing so well and other brands come and then they didn't really make it? I think the audience will be curious to know. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess with Anytime Fitness, it's a proven brand across, we've got 37 countries and we're on all 7 continents. So prior to entering Singapore, the brand was already very strong. And what we do that's different to a lot of the other fitness brands is our clients, our members are just everyday people. So we target the mass population, whereas a lot of other brands are targeting a niche. For instance, you know, just women. And those brands have traditionally had some issues, not all the brands, of course. So I think it depends on the brand and what your target market is. And you know, there's a question from Robin Yeo in the Q&A. How do you determine if a franchise concept has market demand? Through due diligence, through doing your homework, through speaking to the market, through people like Franchise Licensing Association, other franchisees in your space. You know, don't look at them like competitors, look at them like collaborators. You work together to build your market together. And that's how, from fitness point of view, we will work together in building the industry itself rather than look at each other as competitors. Of course, a lot of us are, you know, working with a smaller market penetration. So, but if you stick with what you're uniquely great at, your USP, then that's the way to enter, and be very clear about what that is and stick to it, and then we'll be fine.
Is on this doing your homework thing. You know, I shared the slide on pastel, you know, and it's proven that, you know, if you don't do your homework, for example, even McDonald's failed in Iceland because just to import certain things from overseas costs a burger to be overly expensive, you know, even in a country like Iceland. I mean, for McDonald's to fail, it's quite incredible. So do your homework. It's very, very important. Now, I'd like to swing the mic back to Andy to see if he has any closing remarks. And then Tricia will take over and share a little bit about also our franchising show coming up in August. Andy, please.
Thanks, Albert. I just want to perhaps make three observations. The first is this: because there's no specific franchise or licensing laws in Singapore, the contracts, as I mentioned earlier, becomes crucial as the licensing and franchising relationship between parties will become wholly governed by the contractual terms. So make sure the contracts provide adequate safeguards for all of your rights, including but not limited to the IP rights, both during as well as after the agreement, right? So post-termination clauses are also important. Remember, a contract that works in, let's say, Japan will still need to be tweaked for adoption in Singapore. An example, I can offer is a Japanese franchisor that entered into a franchise agreement with a Singapore franchisee, but unfortunately, the franchise agreement had an exclusive dispute resolution clause that says that all the disputes are to be heard in a court in Tokyo. The problem is you cannot enforce an injunction order, which is an order restraining the franchisee to do something. When that order is obtained in a Japanese court, you can't enforce it in Singapore. So frequently in a franchise dispute involving IP right, the most important remedy is to secure an injunction. So please, get consultation in the local jurisdiction where you are seeking to do business. The second point is, when you are negotiating with any would-be franchisee or licensee and any proprietary information is going to be shared, please execute a non-disclosure agreement or an NDA. So this ensures that if any negotiations fall through, the counterparty will still be bound by your confidentiality obligation. And then last, this was perhaps not covered in the presentation, but always conduct a thorough due diligence on the compliance requirements for your specific business. So, for example, if you are selling healthcare products or cosmetics, find out what the regulatory requirements are. If you're doing an F&B business, find out what are the laws locally that you have to comply with. Yeah. Thanks, Albert.
To you. Thank you.
A big thank you to our esteemed panelists for sharing your experience and tips. Kindly allow me 5 minutes to share on business matching opportunities available in Singapore. FLA Singapore established a roadmap system to guide companies to use franchising as a business expansion strategy. We have suites of support ranging from diagnostic assessment to accredited courses, awards, and business lead generation through franchise trade show participation. So I'll just be highlighting 2 key events. FLA Singapore is thrilled to once again co-organize the 18th FL Asia with Constella exhibition. This event will provide an excellent platform for brands seeking to penetrate the Southeast Asia market through Singapore. This year's exhibition aims to bring together nearly 8,000 local and international attendees interested in investing in brands from various sectors, including F&B, education, health and wellness, fashion and vending machines, as well as retail technology. The event will be held from the 17th to the 19th of August at Singapore's iconic Marina Bay Sands Expo Convention Centre. FL Asia has a proven track record of successfully connecting brand owners with potential franchisees, hence making it one of the leading franchise exhibitions in the region. It is evident from the statistics of our recent event last year. This is because FL Asia has a dedicated team of channel developers who are committed to facilitating business matching services for all exhibitors. This is to ensure that our exhibitors have the opportunity to connect with potential franchisees and investors to grow their business. Please feel free to reach out to FLA Singapore or our organizing partner Constella directly to secure a booth. Finally, FLA's business matching platform, launched Q4 last year, 2022, enabled 365 days of business matching for our members. So far, more than 250 franchise leads have been facilitated in the last 7 months. FLA has a well-curated template to feature our brands to potential franchisees and investors internationally. Seekers can easily connect and reach out to brand representatives via their profile pages. So kindly do reach out to us if you are keen to know more about the listing. Once again, thank you everyone for spending the last hour with us. We hope you found the session insightful. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us if you require assistance. Thank you and goodbye.